Pastor of Pentecostal Tabernacle for 27 years. If I had stayed until December 2004, I would have done so for 28 years. Then I served as an interim pastor at North Kingston United Pentecostal Church, which is now Pentecostal Sanctuary, for a year. And then I had a stint at Calvary Temple, London. The Pastor Sappleton, passed away, and so the board asked me to come and serve as an interim pastor, which I did for 1 year. So 27 plus 1, 28 plus 1, 29. So I enjoyed very significantly the opportunity to play a role in attempting to lift people from where they are to where they ought to be. So from time to time we all get discouraged, and from time to time we have questions. From time to time we have apprehensions about the future. So I always try to prepare myself to be able to sense that these needs exist and attempt to help. So sometimes people ask me, how did I go about selecting messages to deliver? One of the things I would say to them is that if you share in a close relationship with people, by virtue of your communication, you're able to pick up what their needs are. So there are times in prayer I used to present these needs to the Lord and ask Him to help me to use the message that He would give me to help to lift those needs. And in dealing with people, I've always tried to demonstrate an appreciation in respect of the value of children. So there are times when I would leave the adult class where I was teaching, and I'd go and I'd teach 7, 8-year-old boys. And I would try to see them at what they are likely to be 10 years down the road, 70 if they're 7, or 27. And I'm saying, this young man at 27 could be a bishop, he could be the mayor of the city, he could be a cardiac surgeon, and I try to speak into that. So my presentations had the element of connecting them to what they could be. So it's not now just a 7-year-old boy who's energetic, but a 7-year-old boy who 20 years from now will be 27. So that was quite simple. I enjoy watching old tapes covering the sessions in the British House of Commons. I enjoy listening and watching the cut and thrust of debates, so I enjoy that. I enjoy listening to people's experience because in doing so, it demonstrates to me how we are really connected. Your experience is in many times my experience, and so we are really bonded together. And thirdly, I like to just sit quietly, pray, meditate, and contemplate how good the Lord has been to me, how good He has been to my family, and by family I mean my immediate family, but including the church family. So those are some of the things I like to do in my free time. It's a question to answer, because really I can't think of a defining moment, because things happen gradually. So you live in an environment where people have needs. In order for these needs to be addressed, you have to organize yourself. In organizing yourself to be able to address needs, you're actually ministering. So let me just show you. So at the age of 17, I was asked to serve as the registrar in the Sunday school. That would mean that I'd be responsible for receiving the offerings given at the classes and counting them. So I'd be counting half pennies. I'd be counting pennies. So you can see that's a long time ago. And I'd be also counting farthings, because you had farthings, you had half pennies, you had pennies. And so you can imagine me learning to count farthings and half pennies and pennies. And I guess the Lord must have inspired me to see that it was more than counting farthings and half pennies and pennies. Once in a while you count a shilling, right? Because we could say that shillings weren't quite religious, so they didn't go to church regularly. So in that exposure, I learned a lot of stuff. One, to get it right. One, to get it that people had limited means, but they still gave out of their limited means. So that's one. So you go from there to keeping the church clean. So I was not the janitor, but I learned that because I went to church very early, I could see things that were not right. So if papers were where they ought not to be, I'd move it and store it properly, right? Then I would be involved in working with children. I'd be involved in working in music. I'd be involved in working with young people. I'd be involved in working with seniors. So in ministering to people at those various levels, something is happening to you. And sometimes you're not even aware of it, because I can't tell you. If you were to ask me, when did I move from 5 feet 2 to 5 feet 3, I couldn't tell you. Or when did I move from 160 pounds to 162 pounds, I couldn't tell you the day. And I didn't feel any way until I put my clothes on, and I'd know that, boy, you're really getting big. So in all of that, Keisha, what was happening to me was that, I've always said to people, look, God guides a moving vehicle. Don't sit there and wait on this dream or vision to find out what you do. Whatsoever thy hands findest to do, do it with all thy might. So it's difficult for me to give you a defining moment. I can give you defining moments, because all of these things in their own way, would come under that umbrella. I'd say, Sammy, play harder and play longer. And the reason why I tell Sammy that is because Sammy is now old, and from time to time I see children running up the steps and running down the steps and running on the playfield, and I can just look at them with good memories, because right now the landscape has a lot of challenges. I can't move as quickly as I'd like to move. So I would say to my younger self, I would also say, be more conscious of people relative to their needs and try to address their felt needs. Because I have a philosophy that we really rise by lifting others, and if you are down and I come to help to lift you, I can't lift you and remain down. And another thing that is very important to me, and I'd like to just convey this, is to live more with a sense of your own mortality, because from one day to the next there are elements of deep uncertainties. I wanted to be a medical practitioner. I had this unexpressed passion for people who had physical needs, and I had this strong feeling of wanting to help. So maybe I would have chosen that path. And even now, I still like to have dialogue with medical practitioners, nurses. In fact, when it comes to nurses, when I was living in Jamaica, I would never pass a nurse by the bus stop. I'd always stop and check to find out, where are you going? And I'd take them. In fact, one Sunday morning, I was going to church, and of course, I leave for church very early in the morning before the sun comes up. And just as I leave where I lived, I saw this nurse, and I stopped. And your dad was in the car. So you can imagine a nurse seeing a car stop and two gentlemen are in the car. So I explained to her, I lived in the area, this is my friend. I never pass a nurse without offering to give her a ride. And so she felt comfortable enough to accept it. For having tried to do the best job possible, try to serve your God consistent with his demands, tried to be a good husband to my wife, tried to be a good father to my children, tried to not just be somebody who talk about the Christian faith, but somebody who live the Christian faith. So if at the end of the day, when I close my eyes and I'm in the casket and you come on, well, I'm not even sure I'm going to open the casket anyway. But if that were to be, and you came and you looked at my form and you could say, I tried my best to live, right? That's good for me.